Hello, world. Welcome. And today we're going to have a discussion on body, mind, and spirit and how we heal. Today I have an amazing guest, a practitioner here in Las Vegas. She works all over the world, but here in Las Vegas, we have amazing practitioners who do amazing things. So I would like to take a minute to introduce Laura. So Laura, can you take a moment to just tell us a little bit really quick about what it is that you do?
Thanks, Shay. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me here. And you're right, we do have amazing practitioners here in Las Vegas, and I feel honored that I get to be in this city to do my work. So, I own a company called Energy Therapy. Energy Therapy, in addition to doing the modalities that I do, which I'll share, I have a network of healers. So the reason this came about was because I was getting really far booked out, 4 to 6 weeks, and everyone is asking me, I want to learn what you do. Tell me how to do what you do, right? So, and in addition to that, being booked out 4 to 6 weeks, nobody wants to wait that long for a session. So I pulled together a network of healers. So now when I get a new client referral, they can go to matchwithahealer.com, fill out a profile. I'll tap into their subconscious and literally match them with the healing practitioner that's in their highest and best interest. So right now, all of the healing practitioners that are in this network are trained by me through my modality of the subtle body and heart healing modality. So the subtle body and heart healing modality, we tap into the subconscious using kinesiology, which is just a fancy word for muscle resistance testing. And then we find the energetic block or imbalance that's causing to the physical illness, the mental illness, or the experience that's unwanted, right? And so we really understand that a distortion to the self, meaning anything that causes you emotionally or energetically to perceive yourself as anything other than perfectly perfect in the eyes of God, and or being one with yourself, causes physical pain or emotional pain, or so whether that's trauma, whether that's something that you experienced from childhood or something that you inherited, these things manifest as catalyst, physical illness, problems, challenges, repeating self-destructive behaviors, addiction, anxiety, depression, chronic migraines, and or chronic illness. And when we can tap into your subconscious, we can just ask what the underlying cause of that is, and we can release, or transmute that energy, bringing your body back into a state of homeostasis so it can heal itself.
Beautiful. That's an amazing explanation. So I do have one question really quickly, because I know when I was reading the Law of One, they kept talking about distortions. And I know you use that word in it. For a long time, I didn't understand what are distortions. So can you just explain the word distortion really quickly, just so people have a really good understanding of what that means?
I love it. Yes, thank you for asking that. And that is such it is, when we say distortion, it can be like, what does distortion mean? What is our original state, right? So if now I want to share that I am of a Christian belief, that's my playground. And I want to ask that anyone who is listening to this, that if the words God or Heavenly Father don't resonate with them, that they just replace that with something that does, right? Whether that's universe, whether that's the creator, and not to get hung up on words, because I believe in all religions that they all overlap each other, right? We're all trying to get back to the light, to the original source, right? So, but if you are Christian and you believe the scripture in which says, when Jesus says, right, I am within my Father and my Father is within me, as I am within them and they are within me and we are one, this is a literal scripture verse. We are one with God and we were made in his image. And so if you're made in his image, which means that you were made perfectly, because God does not have any extra matter where he's just going to throw Shay or Laura together. There's no accidents, right? You and I are literally made perfectly imperfect on purpose. And this imperfection is not meaning that we're imperfect. It's really a distortion to our truest original self. So before we came here to have a physical body, and we're all sitting around in the pre-existence choosing to have before we came to have a physical body, we knew everything. We were one with God in all ways. And then we chose to have a body, and then we chose to forget. We forgot where we came from. We forgot how close we were with God. We forgot that we were an extension to him. And we did this so that we could come to remember experientially. So everything we knew conceptually beforehand in the energetic form, we come to the physical body. The physical body, we're caused to forget. We're given this brain, we're given emotions, we're given catalyst, all of these opportunities for us to become self-realized and self-actualized. And so the distortion, meaning the contrast or the polarization to truest self, is what allows us to go, wait a minute, this is not how I want to be. This is not the experience I want to have. I'm better than this. I can be better than this. I can feel better than this. I can act better than this. I can have more joy. I can have more peace. So when we find the distortion that causes us this catalyst of pain or suffering, we can then align our understanding and our perspective to our truest nature, which is Christ consciousness, and heal ourselves. So this is what I mean by distortions. Anything that causes you to believe that you are anything other than one with God in all ways, and in understanding your own power and ability to heal yourself, and thus, therefore, by default, heal the world.
That's beautiful. Great explanation. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Glad that you asked.
Other thing that I want to ask, and it raises another question, is because you talk about Christ consciousness. So can you tell us a little bit about what Christ consciousness is and what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. So I've contemplated myself the difference between God consciousness or Christ consciousness, right? Now, for me, I think we toggle between the two, although I do think that they're different, right? I believe that as human beings, we have the opportunity to receive the blessings of the energetic frequency of Christ's teachings. And then when if you're familiar at all with Dr. David Hawkins, who teaches the maps of consciousness or level of consciousness, Christ vibrates at a frequency in the, if I remember correctly, it's in the fourth dimension, at the 500 frequency, which is love, right? And so we're all born with, whether you want to call it Christ consciousness or God consciousness. And it's my belief and my teaching that this energetic frequency resides in the center of the heart. And this energetic frequency we can tap into through practice and through intention of learning how to listen to our inner voice, right? And that this is what allows, when he says, again, I'm within you as you are within me and we are one, to me, this is that energetic frequency. And what I love is the gift that Jesus Christ came to earth, right? And we have the ability, I think initially, especially in religion, we see this as something outside of ourselves. We see it as God outside of us, Christ outside of us. And although they are beings that walked, Christ was a being that walked earth outside of us, as we study how Jesus Christ lived his life and we study his teachings, we are reminded of that inside of us, and we align our frequency and our intentions and our thoughts and our actions more in alignment with that. And what we're doing is really, truly aligning ourselves with our highest and best selves. So when people say, I really want to know myself, I always say, get to know God, right? If you want to know who you are, get to know God. If you want to know your truest nature, act like Jesus Christ. And as much as you can act like Jesus Christ, you will be in alignment with your highest self, because this is our truest nature, which is love. God said, I am love and I am light. We are love and we are light. And when we align our thoughts, our words, our actions, our bodies, and our surroundings and our environments with that, we are the highest and best version of ourselves, experiencing joy and health and happiness.
Beautiful. Thank you again for that explanation. These are amazing that you can just speak it so fluently and so freely. So great. The other question, before I get into your backstory, because I love the stories and how people got, where they are, I want to know, can you talk to us a little bit about what the higher self is? I know we kind of just talked about it, but when someone says tap into your higher self, what is that like, and how does someone do that?
Oh, that's a great question. These aren't even hard. You get the hard ones right off. So, this is interesting because in my basics training class, I teach about the 3 U's, right? Which is your heart, right? And then your mind, which is also referred to in doctrine and scripture, is actually referred to as the spirit, which I think is interesting. And then you have your body, right? So I remember in the beginning of this work really going, when I'm testing, going, who am I asking the question to, right? Where, when I'm trying to get my answers, where is this coming from, right? Is it my body? And sometimes the answer to that could be yes. Is it my mind or my spirit, which your spirit holds all conscious and unconscious thoughts and develops your personality? Or is it my heart, or is it all three, or is it both? What is that, right? And then in my studies, I came to learn there's actually the answer is you can tap into all three, right? But there is a highest self that is above and beyond these, okay? Now, in order to do this work, you don't have to believe this or agree with it, okay? It's just what I experience from myself in my sessions. And I'm going to answer it in two ways. If you want to initially attempt to tap into your highest self, tap into your heart, that Christ consciousness or that God consciousness. Now, if you believe what I believe, okay, I believe that we have a self that is an energetic frequency that exists in a higher density that guides us to our full potentiality, our Christ consciousness, or that which is in our highest and best interest, and is constantly guiding us with the assistance of angels and heavenly hosts in order to become the highest and best versions of ourselves, to become self-actualized. So for me, when I'm in a session and I call in your highest self and my highest self, this is who I'm asking for. It is the highest self that knows us in every timeline, in every lifetime, and in every dimension. That which knows everything that has been written in our records and or can be written in the future. That which has no bias, meaning that there's no emotional attachment to the outcome. The only thing that our highest self consists of is an understanding of our evolution to enlightenment or God consciousness, right? So I think that we can be led either way correctly in the right direction, whether we're tapping into our God consciousness within our hearts or our highest self. It really just depends on what your belief is, because at the end of the day, our realities are based off our belief, whether we want to believe that to be true or not, it is. And so it just depends on the individualistic understanding and their faith and knowledge about what is their highest self. So if you don't believe that you have a highest self in a higher density outside of you guiding you, fine, don't worry about it. You can still be led correctly if we just tap into the heart.
Great. Thank you for that. And oh my gosh, there's so many questions just from that explanation, talking about densities and everything. But before we get into all of that, I really would love for you to tell us your backstory, your, journey, how you got into the work that you're doing. So if you wouldn't mind, let us know, how that worked for you.
So everyone always asks me, so let me back up. I suffered since birth. I was born sick. I was born with what at the time was misdiagnosed as fibromyalgia by the time I was 14. I had lots of issues as a child, chronic leg pains that would shoot down my legs, and I would scream at night, and they used to say, oh, it's growing pains. I would have headaches all the time. I would come out of my room and I would cry to my mom, and she would say to me, oh, you're just looking for reasons to get out of bed. And I thought, no, that's not the case, right? I had horrible distension in my stomach, digestive issues from the youngest date I could remember. And as I was growing up, all I could think about was how much pain I was in. And it just started to get worse and worse and worse. Now, I was born in Southern California. And for much of that time, I should share, my parents were divorced when I was about 2 weeks old. And a little bit of this is going to sound like a Jerry Springer show. It's almost unbelievable, right? The movie. Now, my point in sharing this trauma, right, is to show the catalyst, meaning the opportunity for healing here. It's certainly not a woe is me story. We can see that I'm not unhappy about my life or my childhood at all, right? But it's important, I think, for those who might be listening to my story to understand how such a traumatic childhood could lead to the most beautiful healing and opportunities and life, right? Because I certainly didn't see that at the time. As a child, I always wanted to be good, but I wasn't taught in any religion. And we moved around often. We were homeless. I slept in cars and garages and friends' houses. My mother, unfortunately, was in her childhood a victim of circumstance, and then grew up to be a victim of choice. She just had an inability of making good choices, right, that were good for her, which we understand that this happens just because of programming and lack of healing, right? So she oftentimes unconsciously chose victim roles, which caused her children to be in victim roles, very abusive. I moved to Las Vegas when I was 14 and had the opportunity to start working full time, and then eventually got into a corporate industry where I did really well, made great money, and I worked 60 to 80 hours a week, completely ignoring my body. So I really thought the idea of success was education and independence. This way, nobody could kick me out on the streets. This way, no one could turn off the lights and I wouldn't go hungry. And so this was my focus for my life. And I did a great job at that in those areas. On the personal relationship side, not so good. I pretty much repeated the same patterns as my mother did. However, in my early 20s, I got married. And when I got married, we had a beautiful daughter. And then he died in his sleep. When my daughter was 1 year and 3 months, he died a week before his 30th birthday. So here I am thinking, oh, life is good, right? I'm going to have this perfect life that's painted in the picture of a marriage and a family. And that was completely shattered. And in my grief of trying to gain control, after 2 weeks of him dying, I went back to work. And a year later, I got remarried, trying to fill that gap, right? And so this was also based off of some major religious programming about the need to have a righteous priesthood holder in the home, and my fear of repeating my childhood for myself and for my daughter. And I then married a man who had 4 kids. So I'm now a mom of 5. And he unfortunately turned out to be very narcissistic and beat the crap out of me. So that was one of, strangely enough, the greatest gifts. The heavens opened up and was like, oh, I'm not crazy. I can leave, right? So that went on for a couple years, and then not the beatings, I left for as soon as that happened, but the mental abuse, right? And the breaking of my spirit and the breaking of my soul, and me questioning who I am, and am I really as horrible as a person that he makes me out to be, right? So I did this horribly self-destructive, codependent, enabling relationship behaviors a couple more times. So I was married 5 times. 1 died, 4 divorces, right? And I did all of this before my daughter turned 17, and felt so much shame, felt so much guilt, so much sadness, so much brokenheartedness, felt like a complete failure. And I remember one day sitting with a counselor, and he said to me, Laura, you need to trust yourself. And I looked at him and I go, that's a horrible idea. Like, why would you say that? I go, have you seen my history? That makes no sense at all. He goes, no, Laura, you've suffered enough. Now it's time for you to get out on the dating path and start trusting yourself so that you can meet someone who can help you. And I'm thinking, this is a really bad idea, right? Like, this is not, trusting myself does not sound good. So moving forward, right, I attempted to do that. It did not end the way that one would hope it would, right? So fast forward, my last husband, number 5, he suffered terribly from borderline personality disorder symptoms, and anger issues, as well as addiction of all kinds. And there was this moment in which he was screaming and yelling in my face. I don't remember what, I think he was angry that I told him that the food was done in the microwave. And he was so offended by this that he's yelling, and spit is coming out of his mouth, and he's shaking, and his fingers in my face, and his eyes turn black. And I look at him and I was like, you're either possessed by a demon or you have a chemical imbalance. Something is seriously wrong here. Well, turns out later I find out that he was in fact being attacked by a negative entity, and that wasn't him at all. And I knew that. I could see that that was not him, right? But this relationship caused so much turmoil and so much pain that I sat in this without any anger towards him. And I said, what am I doing here? What is it? I make money, I have joy, I go to church, I say my prayers, I have good intentions, but why do I keep choosing this? Why do I keep choosing to be treated like this? And I had almost this out of body experience where myself split and said to myself, and she said, well, you must think you deserve it. And I said, no, I don't. And she goes, yes, you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And I said, no, I don't. And she sat silent. And I'm looking at him and feeling this, my body now pretty well broken, right? I can't even walk without any pain. There's nothing in my life that doesn't hurt. The breathing is so exhausting. Just carrying the weight of my body caused me to be so fatigued. Chronic migraines, inability to sleep. I've slept an average of 3.5 hours. And here it is that I'm still trying to focus on making him happy. I'm like, what am I doing here, right? And I said, as she's sitting there silent, I said, well, I guess she must be right, because otherwise I wouldn't keep doing this, right? And so I said, okay, well, if she's right, and somewhere on a subconscious level, I believe that I deserve it. I can't just keep saying I don't deserve this. That doesn't do any good. I have to take action and do something that allows me, or that's in alignment with someone who doesn't deserve this. So I asked myself, what would somebody who knows that they don't deserve this do? And she said, well, she would leave. And I go, okay, I'm going to do that. So I did that, right? And over the next couple of months, I then had an opportunity to travel to Costa Rica to participate in ayahuasca ceremonies, which is a ancient indigenous plant medicine tea where you can sit with shamans. And I had no idea what to expect. What I really did not expect was physical healing. I expected to clear out my mind so that I could meditate. So that was the intention of what I went for, to get rid of whatever's in my mind so that I could meditate. But when I went there and I spent a week doing this, I purged. The medicine causes you to throw up and have diarrhea. It's a very intense experience. I purged out all my illnesses. I purged out my Lyme disease. I purged out my co-infections. I purged out all of these infections that were in my body. And I asked myself, who have I become? And in this journey, the answer was I had become my pain. And so as I understood that, I realized that every thought that I had throughout the day, pretty much every thought, was about how much pain I was in physically and then emotionally in my relationships. And I asked, well, why did I do this? On an unconscious level, why did I do this? Nobody thinks that they choose to be in pain, but if we take full accountability and responsibility that we choose everything, even the worst, for our highest good, then we can take accountability and responsibility and begin to heal. So I said, why did I do this? And what does this serve? Why am I this way? And the answer was, it's a distraction. And then it clicked. And I thought, yeah, because if I wasn't distracted, I would be a pretty powerful being, right? And it was that simple, right? And I went back into my journey and my healing and experience for that week, and I continued to purge and get all of these sicknesses out of my body. And for the first time, I could run. I could run. For the first time in 37 years, I could run. I could breathe without it hurting. I could sleep. I could poop. I could think. I could meditate. I could do all of these things I couldn't do before. And this beautiful plant medicine allows you to reset your serotonin levels, your dopamine levels, your circadian rhythm, and then, of course, purge out the physical and emotional trauma that you've been storing, whether that's inherited, which mine was, and or gathered from my own decisions to be a victim in these roles, which I didn't think I was at the time, but I surely was. And when I came home, all of a sudden, I was open to my highest self and to God and personal revelation in a very profound way. I started hearing my highest self for the first time. And now when I say for the first time, I identified that in my previous years, I was very close to the Spirit of the Holy Ghost. I could hear that. I could hear guidance, but this was much different than what I had experienced before. And throughout this process, I had changed my diet. I had changed the opportunities to take care of myself, right? And making good decisions, better decisions that were in alignment with someone who thinks that they deserve better, right? Even though I didn't know what that looked like, I had to think about somebody else doing it and go, okay, I'm going to do that, right? And then receiving this opportunity to receive this ayahuasca journey then started to allow me to see in my mind's eye energy, and I could move energy. And I started to hear about what that meant. And even though I was feeling great, doing great, I was still then experiencing some pain here and there. And I thought, why am I experiencing pain? There's no reason for me to be experiencing pain. So this story is going to get towards the end really soon here. But it was a long journey. COVID hit. I went to bed after COVID hit the country, right? Not just the country, but the world, and everything went into shutdown. I went to bed one night on furlough from my corporate job, and I was woken up out of my sleep, and I was told to get certified in emotion code taught by Dr. Bradley Nelson through Discover Healing. And I woke me up out of sleep, and I was like, okay, I went online, signed up for his course, and I became certified in emotion code, which teaches you how to release trapped emotions. And this opened Pandora's box for me. And so I was doing sessions with clients after I got certified, and finding that negative entities would jump from a client to me every time. Every time I was in a session, they would jump from them to me, and I would experience this overwhelming pain. I was like, what is going on here? And I really didn't understand my power. This then led me into understanding generational curses, generational healing, ancestral healing. It led me to understand contracts or agreements which I had knowingly or unknowingly made, either in this incarnation or previous incarnations. This then let me understand about core beliefs that we receive in childhood and or through ancestors. All of these things leave us susceptible to attacks of negative entities, and which we call distortion. If any one of those are off, it leaves an opportunity of weakness within your auric field. And throughout this, I was then guided spiritually about not how to just release energy, but transmute energy, which is drastically different than releasing. We are then able to keep the energy, changing the energetic frequency of it. So now there's no more releasing. And instead of releasing, and so for instance, in emotion code, you can only do a release. They teach 12 emotions in a session, and then it leaves you depleted because you're having processing time. When you transmute, you can actually transmute hundreds, if not thousands, of that same emotion of the same energetic vibration at a time, right? So this really transformed my practice and expounded, allowing me to understand how to transmute energy, how to change the energetic frequency, and then teach that to others. Apparently, I was pretty good at it, which is why I got so far booked out, 4 to 6 weeks. And I thought someone else needs to know how to do this, right? So then I started doing basic training classes, advanced training classes, and then certifying practitioners through my own practice. And here we are now. We have the network of healers. So it's been a beautiful journey.
That's an incredible journey. I love it. I love it. It's like, for me, I love the story, the hero's journey, like you said earlier. Everybody has it, you know what I mean? That gets us to the place that we are right now. So now I know when we talked earlier, you said you also do ceremony. Are you teaching or taking people through ceremony as well?
I have some shamans that I work with, and so we will once to twice a year host ayahuasca ceremonies to allow people to take their healing even deeper. Energy therapy is amazing, and plant medicine is just one more tool in the toolbox. And each night of plant medicine, most people compare to about 10 years worth of therapy. So it's not the only way for healing, but it certainly helps.
Yeah. And so when you have a group together and you do that, do you typically go to these other places, or do you do it here in this area?
I have not done one here in Las Vegas. We've done a few in Arizona and in Costa Rica. And we do a full week retreat, and then we include a bunch of other modalities in order to help individuals take these things home. So in these are sound bath ceremonies, cacao ceremonies, rapé, which is also another plant. And then we do smoke baths, which is a vapor bath that you actually stand and burn the resin or the plants and surround yourself in this plant technology to help purify and cleanse the auric field and provide protection All of these things people can take home. We do breath work, we do guided meditation, all in these retreats. So that way, when you get home, you have tools and resources to tap into your inner self and bring you back inside, right? So it's really a beautiful journey that's transformational for everyone. Everyone comes with an intention. It was revealed to me in Costa Rica. I was doing breath work and I heard, bring the healers together. And I said, what does that mean? and I didn't understand it. It took me about 3 months. I prayed and pondered about it. And what I realized is that, of course, we are all healers, right? We all have the power and the ability to heal ourselves. Yeah. And so to bring them into this space to the intention that we set in these retreats is show me how to become a healer. Not show me how to become a healer like what Shay does or I do necessarily, unless you want to, but show me how to become a healer. And then your sub intention, show me how to heal my body, show me how to heal my marriage, show me how to heal my anxiety, show me how to heal my lack of belief, show me how to heal my abundance issues, right? And then the medicine, when you bring this intention to the medicine, she shows you how to heal it. And then she also helps you purge out anything preventing you or blocking you from doing that. And there's a lot of preparation that goes into that. You have to follow a very strict diet for 2 weeks, and you prepare for at least 30 days prior to coming, really centering and setting your intention. And then when you get there, you have this transformational week. And so far, I have 100% success rate. There's no one who has come who hasn't received their intention. And then they end up usually coming back. So this next retreat I'm doing is the end of January in Flagstaff. We have 20 attendees, and 50% are returnees who have come to my retreats before, and the other 50% are there as new clients or referrals. And they're just amazing retreats, amazing opportunities for healing.
So how would someone find out about your retreats, and what's the best way for them to get signed up to go to one of your retreats?
If you go to matchwithahealer.com, there's a link that is an interest list. You can add your name to the interest list. And then as soon as I know the dates for the next one, I send out a text message and an email letting you know when and where.
And are these retreats typically limited? And do you fill up, or do you allow whoever signs up to come?
So that's a great question. But they typically fill up. I planned this one 9 months in advance. It filled up within 3 months. So it was 6 months before it coming. It filled up pretty quickly. There is an interview process to go through. This is not for everyone, and it's really important that your body is able to come to the medicine. So there's an application and interview process. By application, it just means that you're filling out your intentions and your medical history. The medicine is not for some people. And so if you are currently taking any antidepressants, psychosis medication, it's not compatible with that. And so you will need to stop all medications 30 days prior to coming. So for those who are interested in it, they need to know that will be part of that. And depending on the type of medication you're taking, I recommend, of course, that you consult your doctor. Nobody just stop their medications hardcore, right, in doing that. So, and then other people, if you have a family history, this isn't always the case, but if you have a family history of psychosis and mental illness, but you yourself do not experience that, this could potentially be the result of some generational healing that's not done. And the medicine could induce psychosis for some. So it's really important that I tap into the subconscious and my relationship with the medicine and ask, is this in your highest and best interest? And if the answer is yes, great. And if it's no, it's usually no, not right now. And then we do some healing and prep work to make sure that you are prepared to come and receive it, because your safety is the most important thing. There's nothing more important than your safety. So that's the reason we have 100% success rate. We make sure that everyone's prepared before they come and know it's not just available to anybody.
Beautiful. Now, how do you know when you're working with someone who has a mental illness, generational trauma, or if this is entities that they're working with in your work, in your practice? How do you know how to separate that? Or maybe you can just tell us what a typical session might look like with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll start with the easy one, which is, what does a typical session look like? Sessions are on Zoom, so you can do it in the convenience of your own home. Sessions are 90 minutes. And your first session involves a full intake and evaluation. So in this, I'm going to be asking about your medical history. I'm going to be asking about any medications that you're taking, previous traumas, asking you a couple questions to better identify what you're experiencing. I also then ask you your conscious or cognitive issues. So you're typically coming to me because you're experiencing a catalyst, you're experiencing pain or frustration. And so a client may be coming to me with, I have explosive anger issues, right? Or I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder or BPD, or I've been misdiagnosed with those things and they think I have them, but I don't think that I do, which is most common, right? Or depression, anxiety, or these chronic headaches or chronic illness, whatever it is, right? I can put these into my client management tool. And then I'm also measuring what's referred to as your heart barrier and your level of frequency. We do that at the beginning and at the end of each session. So hypothetically, let's say you're coming to me because you suffer from these emotional mood swings, which one would call mental illness, either due to depression, anxiety, borderline personality, bipolar, psychosis, right? From my experience so far, 100% of the time, these involve negative entities and I say and or meaning or both. A hypersensitivity meaning you're really gifted in being able to hear spiritual beings and or the thoughts and or perceive the emotions of the people around you constantly, and you do not have adequate spiritual boundaries, and this makes you feel crazy. So now, I am not a Western medical doctor, and I'm not certified as one and do not claim to be one, okay? This work, for my protection and yours, I disclose is not a substitute for traditional Western medicine with a licensed therapist, okay? That's not the work that I do. I do alternative medicine, which means that I identify what spiritual and or emotional blocks or imbalances are contributing and causing to the experience that you're having here and now. Anyone who comes to me with mental illness, once we identify the underlying cause from them either hearing voices or having this sense that they're being told to do something, right? We identify that block in or imbalance, which is usually a negative entity. Here's what happens. There is a distortion. There's a belief within yourself. I'm going to just give a prime example of a client that I had. I had a mother call me one time for her 24-year-old son, telling me that her 24-year-old son has been admitted to a psychiatric hospital, that he was involved in doing Kundalini meditation and smoking marijuana while doing that, trying to awaken his Kundalini energy. And this sent him into a catatonic state. He tried to commit suicide. He was unresponsive. He couldn't talk, could hardly walk, and then suicidal. He ended up being put into this psychiatric hospital. So she had known someone else who knew me and said, I think I maybe have a friend that can help him. So while he was in this psychiatric hospital, I took myself with a group of healers, because for this type of work, it sometimes takes a village. And we tapped into his subconscious, and what we identified was that there were three primary entities coming in and out of his auric field, in and out, in and out, in and out, totally taking advantage of him, right? And so when I asked what the core belief within him was that caused this weakness in the auric field and weakness in the body, it was his belief that he didn't belong here, that he didn't belong with his family, that he wasn't good enough, that he was unloved and unwanted. This core belief, with his actions of opening up all of his chakras into doing this Kundalini energy, and then the substance of the marijuana, left him completely susceptible to being physically overcome. So sometimes this entity was in him, sometimes it was out of him, but constantly he had 3 around him that were just looking to get in. So keeping in mind that negative entities don't have physical bodies and they want your physical body. And when you give them the opportunity to do it, they're going to take it. So this is what happened. So for about a week, I worked on him. But because I was in one state and he was in another, I couldn't talk to him. There was no way to do a FaceTime with him. They didn't allow him to have phones. So I did work, constant prayer and meditation over him. His father as well had a timer on his phone. Every 20 minutes he was praying for his son, which I thought was fantastic. So they were taking him while from one facility to another, they stopped by my office. And in this, I was able to do a full session on him, which was really fascinating. It's what some people would call an exorcism, because that is in fact what it was. And I was able to identify this mistaken belief and call in heavenly hosts and angels and all of those on the other side of the veil who are there to help through the power and the authority of which we hold, which is that which we assume. And the assistance was absolutely magnificent. Both of his parents were there. And I asked the light to come in. And when the light came in, he said, I see the light. And as I was testing, it was no, he goes, it's a flicker. So here these entities were trying to mimic the light, but they couldn't hold it for long. But there would be these flashes and I could see the light, but the light was so magnificent and so bright that it was all encompassing of his body, his mind, and mine, right? And so when he told me it flickered, I knew that that was deception. I knew that that wasn't real, right? And I go, no, it's not that light. Right? It's not that one. Tell them to leave, right? And so collectively through his effort of him taking his power back, taking his agency back, and him allowing himself to know that he is loved, as tears ran down his face, right? Of the remembrance of his divinity came back. He was able then, with assistance, to bring his auric field, right, and his chakras into alignment and his breath and raise the vibrational frequency in his heart that allowed it to be strong enough for me to cast these entities out and for him to wake up and for him to see what happened and to come back. And it was one of the most beautiful ceremonies I had ever done, or sessions that I had ever done, because as he looked at his father and his mother and they looked at him, it was as though they were seeing each other for the first time in months, and tears ran down their faces and they hugged and he talked and he laughed, and it was really beautiful, something that they were afraid that they lost him forever. They were afraid that he was going to be in a mental hospital forever. And without this kind of work, that's mental hospitals are filled with people who literally lost their minds as a result of them being taken over from a negative entity. So I'm so grateful for this work. And I mental illness is a real thing. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to dismiss or discredit chemical imbalances and hormonal imbalances that cause us to feel crazy. However, Western medicine and traditional medicine do not have either the tools or the resources or the desire to tap in to find out what are your gifts, what is it that you're actually hearing, right? And to not call you crazy and to say there are frequencies which you are potentially picking up on, which are a gift. And when we learn how to set energy boundaries, when we learn how to discern the difference between our voice and someone else's, and we take our power, we can stop those things, right? And we can do practices and have tools in order to stay in our right mind and know who is who and what is what, and then find out why we're blessed with these gifts. What is the opportunity here that allows us to serve ourselves and others through these gifts and not feel crazy and not be taken over by them.
Yes. Oh, wow. I love that story. That was incredible too, because I know, and it's so funny because that story is right in alignment with the story that, I had with a client recently too, other than, he wasn't in the hospital, and, we have a little bit of a different outcome only because his parents are controlling his situation, but that is incredible. That was beautiful. And yes, I agree that these entities are prevalent out there and people don't even know, and they're misdiagnosed all the time. And that's why we're here doing the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
because I know I myself, along with you, that's what my work is. And I was told by my higher self, my spiritual team, that I'm here to release the darkness and help people, to the attachments, what we call them, release them from their auric field, their energy field, and then to help them discover their gifts. Because right now people are waking up to their gifts and they don't know what to do with that. And so a lot of times, because they're doing things and we're not taught and told how to manage our gifts, we a lot of times will take in those entities or attachments. I had a lady recently who was testing her energy field and put it out, see how far she could expand it. And then all of a sudden she just pulled it back. But when she pulled it back, an entity attachment got trapped in there. And all of a sudden she's having these thoughts like, I want to kill my son. And she called me up and she's like, oh my gosh, I know these are not my thoughts. So can you help me? And I'm like, sure. So anyway, it was crazy.
I love that you said that she knew that these weren't her thoughts. And I guess for anyone listening, that's one of the biggest tell signs, right? Is when you have thoughts and you think to yourself, it doesn't even sound like me. That doesn't, like, that's way harsher than I would ever normally think. And this is one of the biggest signs that you're being attacked by a negative entity, because they whisper these things right into your mind to get you to think lower vibrational thoughts, to lower your frequency, to leave you more susceptible so that they can come in, because they don't like the light, right? So when we're in alignment and our auric field is strong, right, and we're balanced, we're good. They can try to attack us, and we don't even notice the impact of those. But as soon as we have a distortion and we have some weakness, either due to lack of sleep or not eating right, or an argument or something lower vibrational happening, and that sticks with us, and we don't correct that, then we become weak and susceptible to these attacks. So I love that you mentioned that story. I love the work that you do, and I'm so glad that we as sisters, so this is the beautiful thing, right, is at some point in time we were victims of this ourselves, right? And then we came into awareness of what was happening, and we go, no, you tricky little effers, we're not going to let you do that.
Yeah.
So, oh.
It's funny. I was told about a year and a half ago that something was coming in my world that was going to rock my world. And I was told, they said, but you need to go through this because you're going to be helping so many people in the future. And we need you to go through this so you won't be triggered. And I'm like, okay, well, what's coming? Because, I'm like, last time something came in my life like this, my husband got lung cancer and passed away, and I'm like, I don't want something like that. And they're like, oh, no, it's not like that. But just know that something's coming. 6 months later, my sister comes for a visit. She's feeling all this anxiety and depression. I take her to a friend to have some work done about the anxiety, and come to find out she had been molested when she was young, at 4 years old. And then she just went inward and she stayed inside of her shell and she never really grew up. And so we started doing a lot of work. And through that work, I mean, she's a different person today. That was a year and a half ago. But she used to have the thoughts all the time growing up, like you're not good enough. You're a horrible person. Nobody loves you. And, you should just kill yourself. She committed herself to the hospital like 10 times because she didn't want to kill herself. But she had all these voices that kept telling her. So she knew that there was something going on. So when we finally were able to discover it, I swear we have worked through so much healing with her. We've released so many of these dark attachments, these entities, these parts of herself that fractioned off. And now she doesn't feel whole, but even these fractionated parts of her are talking to her, telling her how much they don't like her. And so doing all of this work, it's been such an incredible journey to see her come back to life and become, a functional person in our society. So yeah, it's a beautiful work.
It really is. You're such a blessing to your sister. I love that you shared that story, and I'm so glad that, it just goes to show how much God loves us, right? And so everything that we need is already here. And so when I think about your sister and how sad and how tragic that was, right? here she is, born into a family with a sister who can truly, genuinely help her understand the dynamics. When you talk about things like the self being fractioned off, which is part of the work that we do, although for first time listeners that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but we can be heartbroken, spiritually broken, and divide ourselves, and that's a real thing, right? And so people oftentimes, when they come in a session and they say things that they think sound crazy, they'll say things like, I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like I'm cursed. Or I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like I'm outside of myself. Or I feel like I'm beside myself. I'm like, no, that's a real thing, right? Like you feel like that because that's actually happening, right? Or I feel like someone stabbed me in the back or in the heart. And there's energy saboteurs, right? So all of these things that it's so interesting, intuitively or emotionally or energetically, we know, but then when we try to put it up in our brain, we think, oh, that sounds crazy, right? But it's not crazy at all. It's in fact real and true. And when we can acknowledge it, identify it, address it, and then thankfully through experience have the tools and the resources to bring these distortions back into alignment and remind others who they really are, that they are Christ beings or God beings created in his image and perfectly perfect, just as they are. And we can get rid of energetically these beliefs that your sister and others have about not being worthy, not being good enough, and then create these energy boundaries and shields of protection that allow us to not be so susceptible to these attacks. We have real tools that actually help heal physically, emotionally, spiritually, and then allow you to have joy, right? Allow you to be present, allow you to not feel crazy, allow you to sleep, allow you to breathe, allow you to go to the bathroom, allow you to eat, all these things that we think should just be normal human behaviors that seem to be inhibited as a result of these things that are happening energetically or spiritually. I'm so grateful for these tools. I'm so grateful for these resources, because I'll tell you, my chronic years of illness, not one Western medicine doctor helped me, not one. They had best intentions, right? And I'm so grateful for surgeons and for all of their intentions, but all that did was gave me a pill, lots of pills. I was a walking pharmacy. All that did was gave me a pill, which led to another issue and another failure within one of my systems in my body. And I'm not knocking Western medicine. I need Western medicine. If my leg is broken, I want to go to the hospital. I want to get a cast. That's what I want to do, right? If I need open heart surgery, that's where I want to go to his hospital and have a Western medicine doctor. But when we go through years of nothing working, right, or even traditional talk therapy, we think to ourselves, there's got to be another way. There has to be another way, and there is. And thank God, literally, right?
Yes, and it's so powerful, the work that we do. And I probably would need to tie this up a little bit, but before I do that, I just want to comment and say that, we met at a shadow workshop. And we realized that we're both kind of doing the same work in a different way, but it was amazing because I had mentioned that I was told in 2009 that I'm the gatherer of the puzzle pieces. And I know your reaction was like, I was too, kind of like, we're both doing the same thing. I created my modality. I have practitioners. We kind of do the same thing. We're just working at it in different ways, but it's so fun to see this all coming together, and I was told that each of these communities will just start expanding, and pretty soon the communities will start coming together, and pretty soon this is going to be our reality on our world. And most all of my clients are told to be in your joy. So I've created a community called One Community Rising, where I try to put together things for people to come to heal and to have fun and to find their joy. So whatever that looks like, I invite anyone to come and join us. And Laura, I really appreciate you coming today and being here and having this interview. I hope in the future, maybe we can get together and do more interviews or more talks just about our work and some of our session stories, because honestly, I think the session stories are really powerful.
I agree. And thank you for all the work that you do and making it available to the community, and for taking the time to do this and have me here. I love it. I love this work. I love what we do. I love coming together as healers. That's the other thing that's so beautiful about the profession and the industry that we are in. I think that there's no ego, right? We literally get to stand side by side, right, with each other, fighting evil, right? We're Ghostbusters, and and it's just so that there is enough healing in the world that we need more of us, right? And so it's really beautiful to stand next to you in this work and to meet you and to be brought into your community in this way. I'm very grateful, and I likewise will be sharing this in my community and invite all of those to come to One Community Rising and utilize the resources which you provide.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Laura. Once again, I love you, my beautiful soul sister. And I look forward to us communing together and working together. So thank you.
Thank you.